think she's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know what it is.
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host it. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little neck henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere.
That Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong. Everything they have said over the last couple of years, they likened President Trump to Hitler. They have him, they have shamed him, they have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies they have spewed. These women are completely out of touch with
the typical political insults, sarcasm, and arrogant remarks. However, they chose the incorrect target this time.
ABC having just paid $15 million for a defamation lawsuit would think not to engage in conspiracy theories about assassination attempts, but I guess that's too much to ask from The View. I mean, I gotta ask you, because they said it, are you aware of any plots from Elon Musk to push President Trump downstairs?
Absolutely not. Let me be unequivocally clear about.
They expected it to be the same as always, with that all too familiar condescending tone, cynicism, and covert political jabs. However, they were aiming for the incorrect guy this time. What they were not prepared for was a reaction that would make them rethink their strategy.
Homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said there was wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in the nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
Her furious, all-caps tweets were a waste of time. She chose the wiser course of action and filed a lawsuit instead. She also prevailed. This was a wake-up call for careless rumors masquerading as analysis, not simply another celebrity taking aim at the press. Karoline transformed a smear campaign into a legal demolition by using the truth as a weapon rather than just defending her reputation. The scene, totally caught off guard. What seemed to be simply another headline turned into a moment that tarnished their reputation and established a whole new standard. With popcorn in hand and treating it like a live roast, Megyn Kelly was observing from the sidelines, completely enthralled. Don't worry, however, her flamethrower moment will arrive soon enough. First, there is a little assignment for someone to do.
Melania Trump came out and said she's as pro-choice as they come. And here's the reaction on The View.
I think she hates him. Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so we can all agree on that. That's a given. I also think that she wants to take him out. She doesn't want to be the first lady anymore.
Would you look? This is a network that still runs out facts to these women, like it's concerned about them staying actual. She hates Trump. She doesn't want to be president again. She destroyed the Rose Garden. She hates Christmas. That is what passes for news on a network they did a president.
Just a little reminder to press the like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying this. You just need to click once, but it gives us a huge boost to continue providing you with more engrossing content. Let's go back into it now, because what came next? It was a full-scale media carnage, not simply judicial theater. It wasn't necessary for her to raise her voice. Megyn Kelly struck a verbal blow, so accurate that it seemed as if the studio's self-confidence broke instantly. No yelling, no tirades, just the ruthless, measured truth, honed by years of seeing that panel scoff while evading responsibility. And she wasn't holding back this time. She exposed the host's perceived elitism, pettiness, and unrepentant dishonesty by calling them out by name, including Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and Sunny Hostin. It went beyond simple criticism. Decades of pent-up annoyance were suddenly let loose, cutting, calculated, and devastating.
Gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin is on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right.
Just because you go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't.
Megyn claims that this was a lesson in being totally disconnected from the outside world rather than commentary. And it went viral on the internet. What intensified the impact? Megyn is composed. Her delivery was a lethal combination of roast, courtroom accuracy, and unrepentant ferocity. There were no eye rolls or exaggerated theatrics, just that cold, unwavering assurance that loudly said, "Told you so." And this was just the first act, because the lawsuit revealed a deeper, more unsettling trend rather than simply highlighting one unpleasant instance. Are you prepared to get started? Let's continue. This case wasn't a sudden development. Rather, it exposed a pattern that The View had been using for years. The panel made dramatic allegations week after week, sometimes without any supporting evidence, legal prudence, or consideration.
He's sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, yay, on January 20th of this month. Not everyone's happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed. If you ask them, as we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January
The View
6th was an
today.
atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery.
Yeah, the January 6th is right up there next to the Holocaust.
A no-holds-barred show had developed from what began as political criticism. Melania Trump was made fun of, implying that she hated her husband and was plotting behind the scenes. They made tone-deaf jokes about Elon Musk's attempted assassinations. They also made ludicrous historical analogies associating January 6th with slavery and the Holocaust. These were not unintentional blunders. These were televised, scripted broadcasts that were unedited and unregulated, given with arrogant certainty. Not to mention that the network that orchestrated it, ABC, had previously paid $15 million in a different slander lawsuit. Have we learned our lesson? Apparently not. The program continued to push the envelope until it broke. Megyn Kelly stepped squarely in the center of the controversy, exposing it for what it was: media malpractice masquerading as journalism while donning clever one-liners and latte-drinking snobbery. In addition to causing financial harm, this litigation damaged public confidence and made the industry take a long, hard look in the mirror. Previously unremarkable remarks were suddenly used as evidence in court. Karoline Leavitt, too. She brought a strategic legal storm with the accuracy of an experienced fighter, not simply a case. She arrived prepared with a group of people, a plan, and a ton of receipts.
From, forgive me, those bitches over you.
I'm a Christian girl. When something like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something like God was watching me, that is a very unchristian thing to say because it's very narcissistic. Oh, God was watching me and not watching them? Something very
That's
disturbing.
not what he said.
I should have pulled the plug on that mic yesterday.
That's obnoxious. I don't know what church she goes to. That is how people of faith talk, and the intent is never, he was looking out for me, but not those monsters.
Everything The View thought would remain behind the walls of a studio, internal documents, emails, and scripts, was thrust into the limelight of the courtroom. Things became nasty at that point, because that was more than simply careless air talk. Notes exposing their deliberate exaggeration for ratings, and pieces designed more for shock value than content were smoking guns behind the scenes. This was a planned takedown, not just idle rumors. The court also recognized it for what it was. What about damages? Leavitt's group refused to accept a flimsy apology. They had numbers. With the accuracy of Wall Street experts, they outlined the consequences: long-term repercussions, missed job opportunities, harm to one's image, and an obvious pattern of malevolent intent. The calculation: brutal. The message: worse still for The View.
Was angry when Alyssa pointed out the Trump funeral of Officer Diller.
Yes.
On the island, and Joe Biden went to a podcast. Look at Whoopi Goldberg's reaction.
Choose what you like there, but for Republicans, it was bigotry.
Really?
1 day later, yes.
I'm asking that because I was so offended because you know who showed up.
It shook The View hard. It was a full-fledged reckoning, not only a legal smack on the wrist. As they rushed to control the damage, they were had to recite legal disclaimers 4 times live on broadcast, each one more embarrassing than the previous. But a few uncomfortable remarks weren't the end of the harm. Episodes from the past slowly disappeared from the internet. The sponsors started to pull away. Legal permission was now required even for interns to propose a piece. What had seemed to be a lighthearted morning discussion show had become a legal labyrinth. Megyn Kelly was squarely in the middle of the commotion, not just spouting criticism but transforming it into a dazzling spotlight. It was hard to overlook the flaws in the glossy picture of The View as the dust started to settle. They were now clearly disturbed, stumbling in real time, the formerly unassailable hosts. What about Megyn? She wasn't finished. Cool, collected, and completely precise, she walked in like a forensic investigator at a media crime scene.
Hot mess that they air in the morning, called The View, had to issue not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 corrections, legal corrections. 4 legal notes. We only have them on camera, but look at this.
I have another legal note. Both Trump and Pam Bondi have denied allegations of a quid pro quo. I have a legal note.
Not to mention what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side, and then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a pattern.
She analyzed each slip-up with the accuracy of someone who has been patiently waiting for this opportunity. The call-out then came, aimed directly at Sunny Hostin, who had earlier made fun of white ladies without formal education for supporting the Republican Party. No longer hiding. Stop spinning. The time for responsibility has come. With brutal clarity, Megyn attacked that elitism, reminding everyone that a diploma does not equate to knowledge, and that demeaning regular Americans is the reason why programs like The View have become outdated. She did more than simply criticize conceit. She revealed how the program had become into a megaphone for unrestrained, biased viewpoints rather than a forum for discussion.
The most petty and vacuous of insults. Appears to be a fierce operator, but she is also 27 and arguably quite glamorous. So of course, the kind and progressive voices at The View react to her appointment like this.
I think it's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, it's a 10. You know that's what it is.
This was a habit of focusing on people they disagreed with, and then claiming surprise when there were repercussions. It wasn't about little indiscretions. It was cruelly ironic. It was their brand of feminism, petty trash talk masquerading as progress, when they preached women's emancipation while disparaging Karoline Leavitt's appearance, age, and political connections, saying she only succeeded because Trump labeled her a 10. Megyn saw the hypocrisy and called it what it was. Very hypocritical, narrow-minded, and lazy. The world watched as the courts characterized what The View referred to as thoughts as defamation. When the judgment was rendered, it was a cultural earthquake as much as a legal ruling. Not only did Karoline Leavitt triumph, but she also detonated a media landmine and left the battlefield with a sense of ownership. Why was it even more famous? The host of The View seemed to have been struck by a freight train of subpoenas, but she remained composed and never boasted. This was a change, not a publicity stunt. Karoline's transformation from a youthful political aspirant to a media slayer in heels happened overnight. This was precisely what she knew. Not only did Karoline Leavitt win a lawsuit, but she also made headlines, garnered credibility, and used her media power to silence a whole studio of seasoned presenters. Her triumph was about changing the balance of power and making it abundantly evident that even the most vocal TV personalities are subject to responsibility, not about the money. What about Megyn Kelly? She was commemorating a significant event, when a media conglomerate finally understands that its microphones do not make them invincible, rather than just The View's demise. Megyn presented the whole incident as a watershed, a cautionary tale for any talk show host or producer who ever believed they could say whatever they wanted without facing repercussions. Her weapon was cold, pointed reasoning, delivered with the precision of a surgeon dissecting a patient who never imagined they would require surgery. There was no yelling or insulting. She smiled through every harsh reality, uncovered the flaws, and presented the realities. In an instant, the period of careless, unrestrained hot takes began to come to an end, slowly, painfully, and publicly. However, how did we get here? How did a 20-something lady overthrow one of TV's most influential daytime programs? Easy. While The View continued to play the same old filthy game and eventually got caught, Karoline took the long route. The presenters ridiculed, conjectured, and twisted facts to support their stories for years, treating the practice like a sport. However, they never thought someone like Karoline would use attorneys rather than Twitter to retaliate. Their first error was that. Their second, undervaluing her due to her political views, age, and looks. It was not only an insult, it was public character assassination on national television, and they treated her like an easy target, saying she only received her slot because Trump called her a 10. But this time, there were neither applause or laughter at the conclusion. In the end, there was a jury, a judge, and a pile of court paperwork that were thicker than their cue cards. Megyn Kelly observed everything as if it were a championship match, a program so engrossed in its own world that it forgot there were actual people outside the studio, individuals with rights, legal privileges, and when those rights were violated, Karoline changed the course of events by using ruthless, strategic legal fire instead of theatrics or yelling. The View was burned. What did it truly do to them? The proof. Karoline's legal team arrived ready like a legal SWAT force. They didn't merely file a case and hope for the best. Internal correspondence, segment scripts, and emails all pointed to a wealth of media malfeasance. The View's discovery phase became a nightmare, revealing backstage chit-chat that was never intended to be publicized. Producers spoke candidly about manipulating facts to create drama. Notes revealed that they broadcast several assertions, even though they knew they were untrue. Ratings, not the facts, were everything. The truth was now publicly known. Facts are what courts care about, not whether something makes for good television. And the game was finished when the receipts arrived in the courtroom. This was not an error. It was a calculated approach that caused jurors to begin performing real arithmetic and judges to raise their eyebrows. There was no denying the harm, missed job chances, damage to one's image, and obvious malice. All of it culminated in one of the largest financial successes in television history. This was a message, not simply a fine. Legal TNT had been created out of what The View characterized as innocuous hot takes. Every insult, joke, and careless remark had a cost. Behind the scenes, mayhem broke out, but Karoline's crew wasn't looking for a straightforward apology. For embarrassing legal revisions had to be read live on television by The View. 4 times, not 1. Their features made it clear that they were being compelled to fess up rather than voluntarily. Every adjustment revealed a new layer of their meticulously constructed picture. What about Megyn Kelly? She observed everything as if she were in the front row of a Broadway production of a courtroom. The credibility of The View, however, was rapidly declining. As if the building were on fire, sponsors ran away. As if removing the video would undo the harm, previous episodes were silently removed from the internet. In order to have a part authorized, producers, interns, and even guest hosts had to carefully avoid legal pitfalls. The whole vibe changed. Jokes that are too loose, audacious, unsubstantiated claims, they had vanished. All of a sudden, The View seemed more like a coffee-accompanied legal briefing than a conversation program. Now, the same ladies who had before spoken openly looked over their shoulders, carefully reviewing each word. Karoline remained silent during all of this, and her quiet was quite telling. Not only was The View humiliated, but it was also uncovered and made public. Megyn Kelly ensured that no one turned away. Karoline Leavitt calm stood in the center of it all, calm, collected, and totally undisturbed. She had been a budding political figure just months before. Right now, she was the one who effortlessly and legally took down The View. The change was amazing. She wasn't simply celebrating a victory in court or looking for publicity. She had developed into a powerful individual who could demand respect in any setting. She caused the loudest program on daytime TV eventually settle down and be quiet, not because she yelled the loudest, Megyn Kelly saw the importance. This was about accountability, not politics or sides. She commended Karoline not for her opinions, but for establishing a strong precedent. Media conglomerates cannot just slander individuals to increase their viewership and get away with it. Megyn presented this as the beginning of a societal reckoning in which careless speech had repercussions and microphones were no longer weapons. Together, Karoline and Megyn not only destroyed a program, but they also completely upended the system. The whole media industry felt the shockwaves. Suddenly, newsrooms felt brittle, as if they were treading on glass. Every part was examined by editors, and producers invited attorneys to meetings. The days of sarcasm and swagger were past, and the hot opinions that had flown freely now concluded with anxious caveats like allegedly. Although it had been seen through a legal prism, daytime television had not vanished. Their remarks were scrutinized by every studio as if their careers relied on them, and now they really did. The View's reputation as a forum for a range of women's views was damaged. It was now a warning story told in legal education classes rather than a sign of audacious beliefs. A warning that unrestrained teasing may ruin money accounts in addition to reputation. Not only did Karoline Leavitt win, but she also left her mark on the marble corridors of media history. She demonstrated that the most effective camouflage and weapon is being undervalued. What about Megyn Kelly? She was riding shotgun, heels on the throttle, and accurately delivering every cold reality and searing burn rather than just applauding from the sidelines. Together, they made it very evident that careless conversation in front of the camera is now evidence rather than amusement. Please click the like button and subscribe for future videos if you like this one. Leave a comment below with your opinions, and I'll see you in the next one.